Aye.
Hello.
All right, looks like we've got everyone except for Daniel.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, hello.
Hey.
I still have my calendar commute time to get to this meeting, but I haven't had to commute to it in quite some time, so I may want to take that off my calendar. The commute being about 30 seconds from the prior meeting, pushing a button.
Makes it so much easier.
Although I sit in a state board that regulates hospital construction, and it can get pretty boring sometimes. And when you're in the room, you have to be at least feigning attention. But with Zoom, you can just kind of turn off your camera, go do some other things, come back on.
Mute
Sure
everything.
you're there for a vote.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Daniel. Hello, Daniel.
Hello.
Yeah, looks like we have everyone in attendance. Perfect.
We are all here. We have a minute to go and we'll get started. Though I have all these wind-up clocks that are always off by a minute or two, so they tend to be chiming like when it shouldn't be. So if you suddenly go on mute, that's why, because there's one right behind me. It's very
I
loud.
think we've become used to that over the course of this last round.
It's like the weekly, like try to make them all line up and be the same time, and then they slowly.
No, they're all on their own time, ultimately.
Exactly.
You need an app for that.
Not when you got a wind up, baby. No apps available.
Yeah, or as my sister, my daughter would say, "Daddy, just get a modern clock." So,
Oh, there. You cannot have a good scary movie without a real clock.
that's true. That's true. Well, that one behind me having struck, although it only struck 4, so I got to fix that. Why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order? The regular meeting of the Historic Preservation Board. Could we have the roll call, please?
Member Blake,
Yes.
Member Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Walter,
Yes.
and Chair Folks,
Here.
all present.
Excellent. Do we have any agenda modifications or postponements?
Yes, so staff will be recommending that the board open the public hearing for item number 2 and continue the item to a date uncertain so that some issues regarding unpermitted exterior alterations to the building can be addressed and be rolled into this application at a subsequent date.
Okay, thank you. Any other changes? So we have before us the minutes of the June 23rd meeting. Does anybody have any corrections or changes to them?
No.
Okay. Could I have a motion, a second to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 23rd, 2021.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion?
None.
All right, could I have a roll call vote, please?
You can. Member Blake,
Aye.
Member Moore, I'm sorry,
Aye.
Vice Chair Walter,
Aye.
and Chair Folks.
Aye. All right, those are approved. Oral communications, this is reserved for any individuals wishing to address the board on matters not listed on the agenda. Is there any members of the public who'd like to speak? Seeing none, let's move on to board and staff announcements.
With regard to staff announcements, I did want to note that the app publisher for the city's historic preservation app did contact me. Looks like they're looking to transition the apps to a new platform, which will give it a new appearance. They are preparing a kind of a prototype test visual, and so I'll be able to share that with the board, hopefully by next meeting.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, any other announcements?
Only a question is this the time, Daniel, or under Mills Act old business that we're going to talk about the last city council meeting and the Mills Act applications?
Yeah, we can talk about that during the Mills Act subcommittee report.
Okay.
That's what I figured. Okay. All right, seeing no other announcements, why don't we go ahead and move on to the public hearing. We have item 2, 705 El Patio Drive, or El Patio, I pronounce that drive. Daniel, you've already mentioned your recommendation on postponement. Anything else from the staff report that you wanted to give?
So I'll just expand on my comment. So the applicant, at some point earlier in the year, restuccoed the building. The stucco work would have required a building permit. And although he had disclosed that, my understanding was that it was just a superficial stucco application, but the photographs do clearly show it was more than just plain stucco. It altered a number of the physical elements of the building, the columns, the entryway. So we will be reaching out to the city's architectural advisor, Mark Sandoval, and request that he evaluate the property to see if that facade can be restored in any meaningful way that's still consistent with the city's historic resource inventory provisions. But I have already spoken with the applicant about that. Once I get a quote from service from Mr. Sandoval, then Mr. Key will provide a deposit for that scope of work. And we will work with him to see what our next step is. But being that this is a pretty integral aspect of the building, it would be appropriate that we continue his request for an addition until we can resolve this issue. So for now, if you can open the public hearing, and that would allow anyone willing to speak on the item, we do have Mr. Nelson, the homeowner's architect here.
Okay, that sounds good. Seeing, I think, no reason for more discussion on our part, so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this? Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board. Any discussion, or do I have a motion to continue it to a time uncertain?
I have no comments. I can make a motion if there aren't any other.
I guess the only question I was going to have, I don't know if Daniel, if this is appropriate now or waiting until it comes back with everything else, is that in general, I was okay with the addition, but my only comment was that the addition finished material was basically going to make it look exactly like the front of the house. Therefore, on our previous discussions, we've always asked for the material on the additions to have something that differentiates them, the addition from the main house. So in concert with this stucco issue is being resolved, I only throw it out there since the architect is here, they can at least maybe go back to the drawing board of sorts, at least while they're trying to resolve, and just see if there's something that needs to be done to address that, so we don't spend too much time on the next go around.
I mean, we may,
say too much.
We may want to just table that discussion because that's a good area of discussion for the board when the matter formally comes before you again.
Okay.
Because the approach here is to use a distinction in height as the point of delineation between the old and new. And I mean, obviously we've used material in other examples, but whether or not this particular approach is appropriate is really for the board's purview as a whole to come to a conclusion when we can.
Okay.
Yeah, and one thing that I've talked to Daniel about that we may want to agendize for a future meeting is just to look not on a project basis, but overall at kind of how we see this differentiation. I think we've seen enough applications that come in the last few years where, you know, I think it'd be good for us to just have as a board a discussion about how we feel about that. I've done a bit of research and it seems to be, you know, different cities do it different ways. Some actually are pushing more, you know, having it be more seamless for different reasons. And I think it'd just be good for us to, without a project in front of us, just to talk about, you know, how we feel applying those guidelines, because I do feel it's right now it's kind of on a project by project basis, which is fine, but I think it'd be good to have a discussion just so we're all kind of share our views on what's best from a historic preservation standpoint, what follows the guidelines and what's really more of a, you know, really discretionary on our part. So
Yeah,
something
we can certainly schedule a study session to discuss that holistically.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No other comments? Do I have a motion to continue?
Yes, I will make a motion that we continue item number 2 for the public hearing on 705 El Patio Drive for a Tier 1 resource alternation permit.
And I will second that.
Great. Any discussion? Can we have a roll call, please?
Member Blake,
Aye.
Member Moore,
Aye.
Vice Chair Walter,
Aye.
and Chair Folks.
Aye.
Unanimous, 4-0.
All right, thank you. That item is continued. Let's move on now to old business. We've got,
I will check out now. Thank you very much for your
Okay.
help.
great,
Thank you.
Nelson.
Aye.
So old business, I know we have an update from the subcommittee, but since we had the council meeting, Daniel, do you want to start off with that?
So yeah, just a little background. So at the last council meeting, the council did approve the 3 Mills Act applications and effectively provided the one exception to the overall cap. So we now have 11 Mills Act contracts approved. I still need to get those contracts out to the homeowner, so that's on my list of things to do. The council did also indicate a desire for the board and staff to complete the audit of the existing contracts. So that's something that we should discuss right now, how we should divvy up that work. And they would like to see the audit really before considering any expansion in the Mills Act program.
Right, no, which makes sense. I mean, and I think guidelines too, we've talked about to make sure that we are getting the updates that the people who have the Mills Acts either are or not complying with, right? Because we don't have visibility to that. In terms of the process side from the city's perspective, have we gotten have all the folks who have current Mills Acts complied with that and gotten the information to you?
Yes, I believe we do have, I'm just double checking my computer right here.
And I can jump in a little bit while you're doing that too, Daniel. From our memory is that we have all the applications or all the information that they submitted. What we were going to do is go through them and confirm that the information was adequate, because the information came in different forms. So if I remember right, on some of them, not everybody had apples to apples in terms of the same amount of information that we needed. So as part of this audit was going to go through and identify, hey, homeowner number A, B, C, whatever, thank you, or all your information is good, or whatever homeowners are missing information, that we can then reach back out to them and say, this is the information we're missing, so that we have apples to apples across the board to do our assessment, or to at least identify that, hey, we are not getting what we needed Therefore, the audit will have some missing information.
That's pretty much correct. So we do have files for all the existing contracts. We had provided a letter asking that they use kind of a standardized format. I don't think all of them did that, but regardless, it's still effectively necessary to go line by line, compare all the invoices, and just to ensure that the tabulations are all accurate. I know we probably have some gaps in the information because some of the homeowners have been providing information to the county under the impression, which, you know, reasonably so, that the county was providing that information to the city. And so some of those homeowners didn't provide all of their information. But yeah, so we just have a lot of material that we need to chew through, put into an Excel table, and just effectively cross compare to the existing contracts to see to what extent they've really done what they've agreed to within the 10-year contract window. Though if I recall, not some of the earlier contracts didn't have very clear work plans, so to some degree that might be a little challenging, but we should hopefully at least have some sense of how much money has been spent in aggregate compared to how much money has been saved. And that's kind of really the goal, I think, for the council, to get a sense of really how much reinvestment has occurred.
So is this, in terms of that analysis, is this something that the subcommittee wants to take on? Is this something that we want just to send it all out to everyone and we all take a look at it? Is something we want to parse among the four of us? What's the best? What do you think? I mean, I just don't know how much workload is here. I mean, on the one hand, it's nice to have some consistency across the different applications because, right, what Susan looks at an application, other application may be very different, but I also don't want to, you know, give a ton of work to somebody. So what do you think is the best approach?
I mean, I was thinking of working with the subcommittee to divide up the materials. I can prepare maybe kind of a new standardized spreadsheet that then we just populate and with that information and see what comes out the other side.
And that's fine, because as Mike, that's what Susan and I were starting to do when this first started last year, and then they had us put it on hold because the city council didn't want us. So we already have the four, each of us have the 4 properties that we are to review. So now that the city council said to proceed, we can jump in there and start doing that. That's not a problem.
Great. Okay. So that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, just for the whole board's reference, I'm gonna quickly share my screen to show what we're talking about. So this was the letter. I mean, timing was really unfortunate. This was the letter sent out February 14, 2020, just before a month, month before everything fell apart. So this is what we had required or requested, really, that everyone provide a completed reporting form, which we included, and then just invoices kind of identifying how they complied with that 10-year work plan, and then anything that they had submitted to the county, which again, I don't think most people had those documents since they felt that they had already done their obligation under the contract.
And so just for the rest of the board, if you're not, I don't remember if we've discussed this or not, but whatever the homeowners sent to the county didn't send documents or make copies and send them to the city council, and they also don't have them on file there apparently either. So
Right.
whatever they created
They're
and gave
gone.
to the county is now gone.
Right.
Correct. And they also indicated that even if they had them, they wouldn't disclose them because they're subject to some restrictions in finance law.
So we'll go through them and see and do the best we can based on the contract with the city, identifying all the expenses and everything, and whatever information is missing, we'll just go back to the owner and try to close those holes as best we can, and then provide our findings back to you guys as well as to the city council.
As far as going forward, would those, the 10 homes, would those homeowners be able to report to us and we could give it to the county? Because that way we wouldn't have to be subject to the county not having the information.
I believe the county wants to get out of the business of receiving any of this information.
Huh, so maybe we should collect it ourselves.
Yeah, I think that would be advisable moving forward.
And that's one of our recommendations for updating the whole Mills Act application process, is that the applicant, or excuse me, not the applicant, the property owner under a Mills Act would provide the information to both the county and the city yearly. It's been very difficult for me, and I got some help from my husband because I'm not an accountant to try to look at expenditures from 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20 to try to compare what the expenditures were versus what the taxes were. And I got into the weeds right away, but I'll do what I can do.
Yeah, and maybe if the subcommittee and myself, we can arrange to meet. I don't know if the two of you are okay coming into City Hall. I mean, you're both city appointed commissioners, so you would be allowed into the building if you're comfortable with that. We can just sit
Yes,
down.
I'm fine.
conference
I'm
room.
fully vaccinated.
Works with me.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll offline, we'll schedule, I'll write a note, we can schedule a meeting.
And so
Great.
just to clarify, we now have 11 Mills Act contracts with through the city, correct, Danielle?
Correct.
And so
But the
now
last
we're
three-
full, so we can't do any more at this point, even though even though city council allowed one more over the allocated 10.
Correct.
Okay,
They're actually very clear, it's a one-time exception.
okay.
Yeah. Based on my observations of the rebroadcast of the council meeting, it looks like these three latest Mills Act contracts will be for a period of 10 years. Is that true?
That is true.
So
So
that's
once they're-
different
once they're
from the
signed
other
and
8.
Correct. So once they're signed and issued, we will issue a notice of non-renewal, which will expire them out in 10 years.
So does that mean someone would have to reapply at that point, or are they not allowed to reapply?
They could reapply.
How about the 8 previous ones? Have we submitted a non-renewal to any of them to start the clock on those properties?
City council didn't provide any direction in that regard.
And I think that's probably a recommendation that we would want to look at. You know, I see kind of us coming out of this as here's the kind of assessment of what people have been doing, and I'm sure there'll be some deficiencies and either people not maintaining the properties appropriately or just not having any documentation, so we don't know. And to some degree, you know, they were doing what they were required to do, hopefully, at the time, but I think it just gives a sense of where things stand, what changes we're making that are going to tighten that up, right, and really make it a much better approach. The recommendation or not, that we do send those letters just to make it fair for everyone, right? Everyone gets 10 years, and then if you're continuing to take care of your house, you can apply and get another 10 years, whatever, but it doesn't just evergreen. And then my hope is then that we'd actually suggest, you know, upping that number, given all the, you know, all of the processes and procedures we have, and the fact that, you know, overall, it, you know, the program is doing what it will be doing, what it needs to be doing in a city like ours that has so many historic homes in it. So
Yeah, I mean, I think effectively, I think an increase in number of contracts will have to be paired with basically an overhaul of the program and go hand in hand.
Agreed.
Yep.
So do you want to report out on what we've been working on, Todd, or do you want me to do it?
Oh, I can do it. So in terms of our committee, we've slowly started back up on going through the kind of the agenda that we created last year. And Susan and I have been talking about, you know, updating various components of it. And so our intent is that we're still working together to then revise each section to come back with basically a little bit more defined outline of what we're recommending based on our previous conversations with the board. And we'll submit that as one packet that identifies all 15, 16 items that we had listed on there, so that you have a comprehensive packet to look at for a subsequent meeting. Then we can talk together as a group about that. Any tweaks that we need to do from there, then we'll make kind of our final changes. And then we'll just have to coordinate with Daniel in terms of kind of more the legalese and the final kind of the written format and everything of the document, again, our intent wasn't, we're not writing it as if this is the final actual language in every single sentence.
It's a
Because city
draft.
council, planning, legal, everybody's going to want to have their say in it. So it's really giving them kind of a 5,000-foot view from the sky with our recommendations, including key things that we want to have it in there, and then let the powers to be kind of do their handiwork in terms of the wordsmithing of it all.
So
miss anything?
specifically, just so you know, some of the things that we've been working on, we created a draft checklist to be included in the revised application. We did a revised draft of frequently asked questions. We revised a draft of the list of conditions for approval. We're looking at the draft ranking system and the ranking matrix, and we want to include a sample Mills Act application as part of the update. So just some stuff that we've been working on over the last few months.
That's great. Well, and it's
Yeah,
good
and
that we've got the council's, attention on this. So I think that's helpful.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, and I think too, once the audit is complete, we'll then find a way to forward that information to the council, and that can probably also maybe include some of the preliminary materials to give the council kind of a general idea of where the board wants to take the program. And this way that if they want to prioritize it, add it to the work plan, we can then go from there and start working on an actual ordinance with codified language.
Excellent.
I'm happy we were able to meet. I feel better that we have kind of a revised sense of direction. So thank you.
Okay, well, I think that's great. Anything else on Mills Act? All right, so one question, Daniel, just for my planning. As of now, for next month's meeting, does it look like it's going to have a bunch of items, or do we not know yet?
We have no regular items for next month's meeting, and I mean, there is some possibility that 705 El Patio could go to next meeting, but I don't know yet. I mean, it's going to depend on Mark Sandoval's availability, on his availability to actually inspect the property, prepare a report, and for us to understand the ramifications of what he has to advise. So it's probably less likely that we'll have a meeting than not.
And
Okay.
there will not be a meeting in November. That's my understanding.
Is that the one? Yeah, I believe we combined.
Early December.
Yeah, I have to take a look at that schedule. Give me one moment.
We were scheduled to meet in December on the 8th.
Correct. So we canceled November 24th, and we are scheduled December 8th. So depending, I mean, we can always, for Mr. Key, I don't necessarily want to hold them up unnecessarily all the way through December if we can avoid it. So depending on what Mark Sandoval has to say, we may reach out to the board to see if we can schedule a separate meeting to consider his application if we aren't able to schedule it for next meeting.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay. I was just asking just for planning purposes because I'll be in San Diego for the next meeting, but so I want to make sure it was going to be a long one that I blocked time because I'll be at a conference. Great. Anything else to go over? If not, wow, this is a quick meeting today. That's good. So we will adjourn until the next regular scheduled historic preservation board meeting on October 27th at 5 p.m. conducted by Zoom. So thanks everyone, and look forward to seeing you next month.
Have a good evening.
Fall
everybody.
equinox, everyone.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.